You know, I love podcasting. I have since 2006, back when you had to use like a Dixie cup with string to make the thing work. And that's why I'm so excited that we recently moved Mysterious Goings On to Anchor FM to record our podcast. I gotta tell you, I don't regret it a bit. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. Not going to lie to you, when I first heard about Anchor, I was a little dubious because I've been doing it the hard way for so long. But I got to tell you, it's very easy. Use a Stripe account. Get sponsors. You're not paying monthly hosting fees. The sound quality is great. The distribution is phenomenal. Friends, download the free Anchor app today if you want to start your own podcast, or go to anchor.fm to get started. Remember, you heard it here first on Mysterious Goings On. Welcome to Mysterious Goings On. I'm your host, Alex Greenwood. Thanks so much for checking us out. And I'll do my usual mea culpa. Yes, I know I have not been consistently posting. Lots of reasons. Won't go into them now. Got too many good things to cover in this episode. You know, being a writer is a lot of fun, except when it comes down to getting your drafts done and thinking they're the most magnificent thing ever cranked out. And then you ship it off to your editor, and he or she gently, or not so gently, lets you know, a lot of this is pretty good, but most of it's crap. And that's probably an exaggeration to a degree, but when I've had that happen to me, it's in retrospect been a really positive thing, because the editor has often saved my bacon by, helping me restrain my flights of fancy and to bring the story in where it needs to be, and maybe even coming up with some good ideas to help me close some loopholes and make the characters grow a little bit more. And in that vein, that's why I'm thrilled to introduce you to Robert Hayes, my longtime friend, but also my editor, and a guy with a very interesting take on life and stories and issues of the day. I think it'd be nice if you could just join me for a conversation with Robert. So, hey, Robert, how are you?
Hi, Alex. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, sure. You know, we, just so folks who read the John Pilot mysteries know, you did Pilot's Blood. I know that. What was the other one? Was it Ghost? You did the other one? Or was it...
This seems like the kind of question we should have researched before we started the podcast.
You did Blood and Seven, I think, actually.
I believe Blood and Seven is correct.
Right. And
the stories.
Which is, interestingly, two of my better received books, and due not in any small part to your contribution. So, here I am in front of everybody, Robert. I've known you for 30 plus years, and I am thanking you, and I'm recording it and telling everybody, yes, you did make my work much better.
Well, I greatly appreciate that, Alex, and I have to tell you that it is not possible to polish a turd. And if your work hadn't been good to begin with, I could not have made it better. So it was the inherent quality of what I started with that actually got us over the finish line.
Well, hey, thanks. I appreciate that. And, those books have had some critical acclaim and some small press award love. So, thank you. And you're also a writer in your own right, which we'll get to in a little bit. But I thought it'd be kind of interesting if we could just real quick go back. I just alluded to the fact that we've known each other for over 3 decades. I'm trying to remember when I first met you. I know where I first met you. I don't remember the exact day. I was probably in a drama class in high school.
So. It would have been in Terry Payne's drama class at Dell City High School in 1985.
Oh my gosh. Oh my
So
gosh.
35 years. You're older than you think. And
We
and I don't remember the exact moment we met, but I do remember meeting you. I believe you, Scott Bartley, and Angel Tyndall were sitting cross-legged on various desks in the drama classroom on the first day of class. And I
right.
thought, who are these odd people?
Right. Well, and now had you just come in? Were you? Was that your first year at Del City, or were you at Del City all 3 of your years?
That was my first year at Del City.
Because
I was there as a junior and as a senior.
was your dad military?
My dad was in the Air Force. He was at Tinker,
Okay.
and that's where we met.
Right, right. And I just remember you always had this, well, just your just keeping up with you mentally was tough for me because you were very quick-witted and way more intelligent than me. There I go again. Look at this. You can see you can use this in perpetuity, my friend, whenever you and I get into an
But
argument.
to balance things out, we should also reflect I'm also much better looking than you are.
And you are. You are. You truly are.
Oh God, I wish I was, sir. I wish I was.
Oh, dude, it's all smoke and mirrors for me. But I remember we did a Dracula, which had that incredible set, and you were Jonathan
Oh yes,
Harker, and I was
I
Renfield.
was.
I was the nut job eating flies, and you were the handsome young
You were
lead.
terrific.
Oh well, thank you. Well, so are you.
Oh, no, I was terrible. You were terrific. Uh, that was a fun play. I really enjoyed
Do
doing
you
that.
do you remember that Mr. Payne like went all out and broke the budget and ordered the really cool sets and everything?
Yeah, I remember working on the sets. In fact, I
Yeah.
think my carpentry and painting work contributed a lot more to the success of that particular play than my acting did. Because let me explain. Let me explain to your audience, Alex, that as an actor and as a dramatist, I am a fantastic writer.
You were not bad by any means, and you
I could
know.
remember my lines, and that's the most that you could say for me. I remember Terry trying desperately to coax some emotion out of me during the various, scenery chewing scenes that Jonathan Harker is supposed to, carry with his profound feelings for Mina or whatever the woman's name
Was
was.
it?
And he ended up having me turn to the mantelpiece and pretend to cry because that way at least no one could see my face.
I did remember that. Oh wow! Oh my God, I forgot that.
It was years later that I remember, that I thought about this. Says, wait a minute, he wasn't trying to make it. He was son of a bitch.
Oh my God. Well, it went well, and it went so well that when I did a student-directed version of Mice and Men, I brought you into that because I really wanted you in that, and you, we all know that your portrayal of Wit was the actual
Clearly,
the dramatic
the
focus,
dramatic focus,
right,
yes, of the play.
of the play. Oh man, that
I,
was
I,
hmm?
good times, good times.
It was such good
Again,
times.
again, for Alex's audiences who may not be familiar with Steinbeck's work, Wit is a character who exists to drop, I believe, one expository line about there being brothels in the local town that the cowboys like to go to set up a later plot development. That's the only reason Wit exists in the entire play.
Is that right?
He's basically, yeah, he has nothing to, he is a nothing. He is a zero character.
Well, you did a lot with that, and it was a good show. In fact, that show got me a full ride theater scholarship offer from a small school, which I declined because even then realized, my God, I'm okay as an actor, but I don't want to make a living at it or try to. This is too hard. I wouldn't want to do that. So, yeah, do something easier, like try to write or something. But well, so we met there and we kept in touch. You went on to, was it Oberlin? Is that where you matriculated?
I went to college at Oberlin. I didn't graduate there. I did 2 years before the siren call of a woman who was having sex with me pulled me away, and I went to Washington, D.C., where we worked as office temporaries for a time, which was actually an enjoyable and informative way to make a living back then. I don't know if it is now. And from there, I stayed in Washington for a few years, did increasingly responsible work. Then we ended up moving to Washington State, and where I attempted a different college, Evergreen State College.
Evergreen, wow, yeah.
Make a go of it there because Evergreen is the kind of school where a motivated and self-disciplined person can get a tremendous education. And they market it to hippies, who, broadly speaking, don't tend to be highly motivated and self-disciplined people. Yeah. So I pretty much just screwed off the entire time. That's really when I started doing creative work and writing work as a way of making a living. I ended up going back, long story short, I ended up in Washington State for about, 12 years or so. Worked at Microsoft for a while, became a computer programmer. Then got tired of that and decided for sure writing was my calling and my path, and I moved to Colorado, and I've been here ever since.
It's interesting to me, and because sometimes you and I will butt heads about political things because you're much more conservative than I am, but you went to a couple of really liberal schools.
Well, it's fair to say that I'm conservative in some senses. I'm also a very liberal person in many other senses. I would say that I use the word libertarian, and I definitively do not mean the political party, which is mainly populated by gentlemen with very large belt buckles, large gun collections, and an inordinate fondness for the gold standard. And I don't have any of those things. But I believe in... Well, I'm reaching the age of cynicism, which, considering that I was born... My father is fond of saying that I was born 40 years old.
Oh, I believe that.
In terms of my, jaundiced view of human nature and the world. But I believe in human freedom. I believe in individual rights and individual freedom, which causes me to end up butting heads with a lot of people politically, because almost everyone wants to tell other people what to do in at least some areas of life. Mm-hmm. And I do too. I fall victim to the exact same temptation. It's the power fallacy. It's the belief that we can get other people to do things that they don't want to do. And you can, to a degree. I mean, you can incentivize behavior with money. You can incentivize behavior with the threat of punishment. You can hold a gun to somebody's head and say, do this or I'll shoot you. And that works pretty well, at least over the short run. But I am much more attracted to solutions to problems that involve letting people do what they want to do and trying to mitigate the negative consequences from that, rather than trying to control things and create systems where people have to do what they're supposed to do.
You clearly don't believe that you can control human behavior.
There is a saying that was, I believe, first formulated in the Harvard Psychology Department, Office of Human Behavioral Research. And it says, and I quote, "Human beings under carefully controlled laboratory conditions will do as they damn well please."
Yeah, it's interesting that and I never really get mad like I used to with you about arguments. It's just, to me, life's too short. I'm getting to the age where it's like, I can't fix everything, and I don't necessarily want to impose my will, believe it or not, on other people. I do have very, very real beliefs and thoughts about how I think things should go and how things should run and how people should be treated. But I must confess that I often... It's so funny how insidious you can be about this kind of thing, because I will spout off an opinion, usually on social media or something, and you will come in with your surgical precision and take it apart. And the thing that I have to congratulate you on, though, is you are, I'm coming in on my hot rod, let's say, of idealism or whatever, and
Hmm.
and by the time you're done with it, it's in pieces on the ground. But I'm not really mad that my hot rod doesn't drive anymore. You know what I mean? It's like you do it in a way. It's like, no, see, if you think about it, you don't say if you think about it, but you have a way of zeroing in on the thing, and rhetorically, not saying to me I'm full of shit, but just saying, okay, but I appreciate where you're coming from, but your hot rod is ridiculous, and I'm going to take it apart for you now. And here, have a fender, take that home. That's how you do it.
It's let's put it this way. I used to be 1,000 times more of an asshole than I am now. 1,000 is a good round number.
Mm-hmm.
Over the course of many years, I've made some progress on my own issues. So, for example, when we were 15 years old, if we had a political disagreement, I wouldn't be probably coming at you from a point of view of us having a political disagreement. I would be expressing my resentment over something that had happened in an unrelated context,
Hmm.
or my feeling of inadequacy compared to you in some area that might, be tangentially connected to what we're talking about, but not really.
Right.
I won't say that I'm over that, but I'm no longer 15 years old,
Yeah.
and I've gained I've gained the normal amount of insight that if someone isn't a complete moron, they pick up over time, a few insights as life goes on, as they hit the same brick wall over and over and over again. Eventually, a connection is formed in their brain of, if you see something big and red looming up, perhaps you should put on the brakes and not accelerate.
Right.
Perhaps not charge into the wall. Perhaps look for a door.
Right. Well, and
I've
it's
learned that much.
you have, and I just wish, in a macro sense, the nation could be more like that.
Oh yes, because what we need is for the world to be more like me. Oh God,
Well, we certainly
God
need
help
people
us
to,
all.
to be more thoughtful and to be more respectful of each other's opinions. Whether you're muttering under your breath, Greenwood's such an idiot, while you're typing a nice response. The point is, you're not saying to my face, or so to speak, you're an idiot. You know what I mean? Whereas
We
now
have a
it's,
Facebook group for that.
well, there probably is.
It's called the Greenwood Idiot Group. We block you from it so you don't see it, but every time you see something dumb, we go over there and we laugh at
Oh my gosh. Well, and it's a good thing I write books, so you can just have them all in print as well. You can just
you. Right.
cross-index all that crap. Yeah.
We do a chapter of the day club sometimes. We make fun of some. No, I'm just not being serious.
Oh, but
It's helped a lot that I've had many friends and many people who were very important to me emotionally, very close relationships, where the people have had just hugely different ways of looking at the world. And when you have that kind of interaction in your social network, you have to learn how to deal with, well, this person believes this radically different thing than I believe. But I love them, and they love me. So either we throw away love, and God help us, there's not enough love in the world that we can afford to throw it away,
right.
or we learn to respect one another and try to figure out, maybe they think that way because they've had different experiences than I've had. Maybe they think that way because they know something that I don't know. Maybe we can reach an accommodation or an understanding rather than you're a fascist, you're a libtard, you're a,
Right.
name calling battle.
That, which would just be lovely right about now with everything. Well, kind of moving forward. So you settled where you settled, and you started your company. And can you give us a little thumbnail about that? What kind of work did you do? Types of clients, that sort of thing.
Gosh, in the beginning, I got a writing job for a marketing guy who was doing an asbestos-related project. And when I was working in those temp jobs in Washington, D.C., one of the temp jobs I had was at an occupational medicine firm called Chase and Associates, where they did asbestos screenings, mesothelioma screenings
Ugh.
for occupational health workers, or for occupational health medical an occupational health medical firm. There we go. And so I learned in the process of in that job, I learned a bunch about asbestos and a bunch about mesothelioma because that doctor, Dr. Chase, wrote a monograph about asbestos and I typed it up. I was the typist. Well, when you type something, you tend to read it.
Mm-hmm.
So I read this, 200-page monograph about asbestos and mesothelioma and how it all connects together and the history of it and all these things that have happened. And he edited it, and this was a major project for him. So I didn't co-write it in any sense. I contributed nothing other than the typing and some grammatical changes. But I ended up learning all of this stuff about asbestos and mesothelioma. So this guy comes along and he wants thousands of articles written about, surprise, asbestos and mesothelioma for law firms who want to attract customers who have been victimized by the asbestos industry. And well, here I am with this, amazing knowledge base that no one else has because very few people have typed up monographs about asbestos and mesothelioma. So I take the job for him, and I made, I don't know, probably $100,000 over a 2-year period writing articles for this guy. And we ended up writing a book. So that's where it started. That was the first client I had and the first actual writing job I did. And from there, that led me by word of mouth to just doing all kinds of stuff. Articles for auto parts places, small businesses doing their websites, just all kinds of freelance. Pay me $1 and I'll write you some words kind of transactions.
And now, when you started working a little bit on my side of the street with the writing, was I one of your first fiction clients for a novel, or did you have others? Or
we had done a couple of fiction. Fiction is a lot harder than nonfiction because, generally speaking, people who are doing nonfiction projects, they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They might not be great writers, but they know what they're talking about. The asbestos guy knew what he was talking about. He wasn't a great writer, but he understood how things work. So fiction, and I say this with love towards all my clients, 90% of the people trying to write fiction are terrible. They're just frankly terrible. And there's nothing that you can do for them because the problem is they're not literate. They don't have the ability to write a story. And I hopefully that this will not come back to bite me in the ass as all my fiction clients say, what? And fire me. But I can't work for those people anyway. But they make the marketplace very crowded with, frankly, garbage.
Oh, yeah.
Your book was terrific. When you get that 10%, the 10% who actually can write, and they just need a little help with their pacing, or they're a little too close to the story.
Yeah.
Or as in the case of you, I would say they're a perfectly good writer, but they're aware, hey, if I have somebody else take a look at this and make a contribution to it, it will be better than it was when I created it. It will go from good to great, or from great to super great.
Well, I appreciate that. I think Stephen King said that you can't really teach people how to write. If you're you can go to school and you can do things. He says, and if you're average, you might be able to get to be good. And he says, if you're good, you'll probably never be anything more than good. That's kind of where I feel like I am, because I know I'm not great, but I know I'm good. I'm good enough to hold people's attention. But I got to confess, seriously, when I first asked you to do my book, mm-hmm. I was nervous as hell because you are not a guy to mince words, and you'll spare my feelings a little bit. But I know you. If it had been total garbage, I think you would have said something like, "Hey, you know what? I am really slammed," or maybe I'm wrong. I don't know how you would have said it. What if you'd gotten that manuscript and thought, old buddy, but still, what would you have said if it was not something you wanted to work on? Just no, or?
Honestly, I would have told you what I would tell any client. I would have said, well, in your case, I'm having a hard time envisioning because your work was good. So.
Oh, well, thank you.
And actually, I think you sent me a chapter first. Right? You didn't just send me the book. You sent me like a chapter because I wanted to see. You were asking for a quote, and so I needed to see. Well, is this going to be a 6 hours per page thing where I'm totally rewriting his book, or is this going to be 5 minutes per page because it's already great and I just have to fix a couple of typos?
Polish it up.
And you sent me a chapter, and the chapter was good. I was like, okay, great, and I was relieved because I didn't want to have that conversation of, buddy, as a writer, you're a great PR guy.
Well, you were up there with my late grandfather, who you have some familiarity with him as well now. You didn't know him, but who wrote for 50 years, and there was when a writer tells you when you're young and impressionable you can write, and even if it's your grandfather who, he was enough
Right.
of a pro that he would not have said to me, oh yeah, he would have been encouraging, but he certainly wouldn't. I just never forget the time he read something of mine and he said, yeah, you got it, you can do it. And I mean, that's all he said.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And it wasn't like, here's your crown, Prince Valiant, put this on. It was just, hey, yeah, you can do this, so keep working on it. That was the beginning. I think if he had just been kind of like avoiding me about it or not said anything positive or just said, well, there's, you know what I mean, did some grandfatherly thing or worse.
Hey, let's get some ice cream.
Yeah, or worse came around and was completely, putting too much syrup on the pancake. I would have known that too. So when you came back and were like, yeah, I think we can do business. This looks fine. And I was tremendously relieved and glad because the notes you gave me for Pilot's Blood were really exceptional, and you also did such excellent work with Pilot 7 on those short stories, and I believe I give you some credit in the acknowledgments for Pilot's Rose. You didn't edit that one, which we'll get into in a minute, but you had given me the germ of an idea because I was kind of blocked. I hate writer's block as a term. I just feel like you're just lazy if you have writer's block usually, but I was having a hard time getting the first bite of the apple going, and you came back and go, well, what if Pilot comes back and the cop who he was kind of messing with and Pilot's key is kidnapped or something, and he's got to figure out what happened to her. And I was like, holy shit, that's it!
Well, that's what an editor is for in a lot of ways. You are an extremely easy person to work with as a writer. So many people get I don't want to say an unhealthy emotional attachment to their work, because you have to be attached to your work. You have to care. But some people get so besotted with their work that, no one thinks their baby is ugly.
Yeah.
No matter how ugly your kid is, you think your kid is great looking.
Right.
But there are some parents who take their child who frankly looks like Winston Churchill and a turd were merged genetically, and they think this kid is going to win beauty pageants. And you're like, I hate to break this to you, man, but that's the hormones talking. Your kid is ugly, and they're not going to be the next William Shatner. They're not going to be this gorgeous hunk of sex machine ever because they're ugly. And a lot of writers, they'll create something and they just love it so much. They cherish it and they hug it to their bosom, and it's wonderful. And if you say, I think that this A here should actually be Anne, they scream at you because you don't understand the majesty of the choices they've made.
Oh.
You have none of that. You have zero of that. I mean, you like your work, you care about your work. And the incident that occurred that made me know that I would be able to work with you and I could edit anything you ever write and I'd be able to get along just fine, was when you had Pilot getting into a fight in a bathroom, and I used a phrase that you weren't familiar with in my editing, and you wrote back and you said, I don't get this. Why is he saying this? You didn't go off on, oh, this is stupid and done. You asked a question. You're like, I don't understand this. Why did you change this to be what it is? And I explained to you, and you're like, oh, okay. But then the way you would ask the question made me realize that actually my change wasn't a good change, and we changed it back.
I don't really remember that, but okay.
It was the sketchy toilet incident.
Oh, the sketchy toilet. Yeah, what is a sketchy toilet? I didn't know what a sketchy toilet was. I was like, okay.
Well, in Europe, a lot of the time, but it's a European English affectation of, I've had a toilet, I've gone to the bathroom and taken care of things. And it came across, so a sketchy toilet is I've quickly run into the bathroom and washed up, which was the exact gist we were trying to get across, that Pilot quickly washed his hands and face to get out of the bathroom where he'd beaten the guy up and he left. And you read it as, he went into the sketchy bathroom, the dirty,
Right.
and it was a very lot like, it is ambiguous. It does say this also, and that's not good. When the writer can argue with the editor, and you didn't really argue, you just said, I don't get this. It tells a great deal about the fact that you have perspective. Perspective is super important.
Well, the way I see it, and I really appreciate this insight from you because I hope my fellow writers listening have this kind of relationship with their editor. You can only make my work better. And I don't want to jump too far ahead. We're kind of fairly linear in our discussion here. I'm kind of talking about your life a little bit, but I want to make sure we kind of stick to that a little bit. But you're working with me now. Well, actually, most of your work's completed on it with a lost manuscript of my late grandfather's, and
Yes.
you. And I'm going to have you back after that book's released because I want to talk more about just that with you. But you actually kind of set me straight on some stuff because I felt. See, my grandfather, as you know, Robert, but to listeners, he was published by Avon and Ballantine and Dell and some of these big publishers for 50 years off and on, about 30-something books and a lot of magazines and pulps and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So he always had a professional editor. Well, I'd never seen any of his work with sans editor, right? So he left me, when he passed away, a manuscript for his last novel, which he wrote about 10 years or so before he died. And I read it as, oh, okay, it's not bad by any means, and we're going to put this out. I'm going to kind of polish it up, and then I'm going to give it to Robert to edit. But I even said to you, I fear he was a bit on the decline with this one. Because you looked at it and were like, oh God, he's so expository in his dialogue and all. And when I read it, I was cringing a little. But then you said to me, he's just lining out facts. He's probably counting on his editor to come back to him to polish up the dialogue and punch it up and have another pass. And that's something he never got to with this book. Isn't that about what you said? Something like that?
Yeah, it was my opinion that he was putting his research into the first draft so that he wouldn't have to have a big stack of notes. You write a book and you've got a big stack of notes of all the things you've researched, and then you start typing your manuscript, but then he didn't want to have to keep going back and forth. So he was just putting all this data into the text of the story as he went. Mr. Johnson, who worked for the railroad, which had in 1834 been founded between the cities of Lima and Akron,
oh, that was driving me crazy.
To the young woman who worked for the newspaper, which had been founded in 1874 by a man named Johnson, who went on and on and on.
Yeah, because
and it was horrible.
It was horrible, and all these. I mean, it's like these characters are like. It was like bad theater back from the 1700s, when they would just kind of spread their legs and put their hands on their hips and announce these expository things and
declaim, yes,
and proclaim everything, yeah, and see, you saw it after I punched up a lot of it, but I told you at the beginning of this project. I'm not in the business of going in there and changing too much because this is his work, and
right.
And I had to recreate a first chapter that got lost, and you gave me some great notes on that too. So I think what to get back to the thrust of what you're saying though is that a lot of writers, particularly insecure writers, and that's what I think this is that we're getting at here is insecurity when the writers jump you about legitimate editorial questions and suggestions. I've edited some work for some people. I'm not a great editor. I'm okay because I used to be in newspapers and I can edit copy and I can also, I can tell a story so I can give advice. But I stopped giving advice to my fellow writers a long time ago unless they specifically. I have this great relationship with another writer, Jason McIntyre, where we can look at each other's work and not get into this, turf battle, pissing match kind of stuff. But most writers I work with otherwise who ask me to look at their stuff, it's just what you talk about. They're so protective of their baby, ugly or not, that it's just like, you're not listening to me anyway. Why am I bothering to do this for you? If all you want me to do is tell you, oh my God, you're brilliant. Well, I mean, I guess I could, but I don't think it's wasting my time and not doing you any favors. Right.
Writers have a structural problem, which is that writing by its nature is a solitary business. There are no group writers. There are no Well, that's not entirely true. Comedy shows on TV have groups, and that actually works pretty well.
The writer's
But
room. Yeah.
narratives,
Yeah.
but narratives, a storytelling thing, generally speaking, has to be done in a solitary fashion. Even writers who work together usually end up handing off the thread. You write a chapter, I write a chapter. You write a chapter, I write a chapter. Because for writing, you go sit down in a room with the door closed and no distractions, and you and the keyboard have an essentially masturbatory relationship where you're all by yourself and you create something. And that's just the nature of the beast. The problem with that is that since you don't have to work with anyone, you never are forced to develop those social skills that people in other lines of work have to develop. You can't do that and be a chef. You can't go into the kitchen alone and create greatness and ignore all the people around. It won't work. Other people have to work with you. You have to have a collaborative process. So you have to build collaborative skills. Pretty much every job on earth has to build collaborative skills or that it just doesn't work. Writers pretty much don't have to do that. You can be a great writer while being an absolute garbage fire of a human being. Harlan Ellison.
Oh. I don't think he was a
Too soon? Fire. No, he wasn't a dumpster fire of a human being, but he was extremely difficult human being.
Oh my God, he was, yeah.
And if he had been the manager of an Office Depot, then at the age of 25, he would have learned how to not be such a difficult human being because he would have had to.
Right.
But as a writer, he didn't have to. And human beings are lazy. What do? We do the things that we have to do.
Yeah.
Do we do anything more than that? Maybe Jesus did, but most people don't.
It's the path of least resistance. Everybody takes that.
Right.
And behavior.
At most, you'll see someone who's really motivated and really wise will, go out of their way to try to be a little bit less of a piece of garbage. And that's you see that and you're like, wow, what a great guy. He only robbed those people. He didn't rob, sodomize, and murder them. He really stepped up.
Oh, so you're writing and editing. You're running your business. You're doing well.
Well, for a certain value of doing well.
Yeah. And so what goes on next? What happens?
Well, I got married. Big mistake. I'm delighted to have the daughter that I have. She's a wonderful person, so I would not change anything. But I should not have gotten married. I was not ready for marriage. And I very badly treated the woman that I was with, which is a pattern in my life. And I ended up running into some financial trouble, as you know. Mm-hmm. And I used to say I made the stupidest decision of my life, but I've subsequently made worse ones, so I'm not really sure where it stands in the rankings as of now. But as of then, it was the stupidest decision I made in my life. We ran into some trouble, and we were in danger of losing the house. We were going to be foreclosed on. And instead of asking for help, I decided in my impeccably brilliant way that robbing a bank would be the solution to the problem. Get the money that I needed to pay back the house and get out of this little hole that we had dug. I won't go into the complexities of why we were in the hole. I'll say that it was largely my fault. Other people had some contribution, but it was largely my fault. So I went up to Denver. I did a lot of research, actually. And actually, to give you some context, probably the year before this had happened, we had been in financial trouble, and we'd gone in and out of financial trouble. And a lot of that was the nature of the freelance lifestyle. Sometimes you've got great clients and you're making all kinds of money, and sometimes there's just not, the doorbell is not ringing, the phone is not ringing, the email inbox is a desolate wasteland with tumbleweeds rolling by. And so we kept going back and forth. We'd be up a little bit, then we'd be down. We'd be up, we'd be down. And we were down for a while, and as I said, we were going to lose the house. It was going to go into foreclosure. So over the course of this year, while feeling desperate about a lot of things, I had started doing research on how can I make several $1,000s quickly without without doing any work. And, well, looked like robbing a bank was a great idea.
Huh.
A lot of people get away with it. It's easy. And it's quick. And you get cash. It's not like stealing a car where you then have to go find someone to buy the car. You've actually stolen the thing that you needed. It's
Right.
very direct. John Dillinger was once asked, why do you rob banks?
That's where the money is.
That's where the money is, yes. It makes it very simple,
Can I stop you for a second? So your research indicated that people got away with it.
Well, the overall clearance rate for bank robberies is about 80%.
Are you
And what
serious?
Clearance rate means someone is caught and convicted. So, for example, homicides, the clearance rate is in the 90% range. Generally speaking, if someone gets murdered, they find out who did it, and that person gets caught, and that person goes to jail. Generally speaking, there's some exceptions, but it's a very serious crime. They take it very seriously. They put the resources in. They catch the person. Shoplifting has a clearance rate of probably 2%. For the most part, you can get away with shoplifting all day long. Had I been rational, I would have shoplifted 100 times and paid the mortgage that way. If I had to do it via crime. But bank robbery, the initial rate is something like 50%. And over time, more people get caught because they do multiple robberies, and an MO gets established, and they start seeing a pattern. They know where to look. But very few people, not very few, but it's a crime where you can get several $1,000s, and you've got a reasonable chance of walking out of the bank and not being caught, and actually even getting away with it. As of course you already know the answer, the end of this story. I didn't end up getting away with it. I got caught.
Now, can I just stipulate here? And you didn't threaten to hurt anybody.
Oh no. Part of the research I did. Well, I'm a relatively nonviolent person to begin with.
Right.
When I was doing my research, I discovered that, generally speaking, banks are train their tellers to cooperate with robbers, to give them what they ask for, to not put up any resistance, to not do anything that would require you to threaten them with a weapon. In fact, using a weapon in a robbery in most places more or less doubles the severity of your penalty if you are caught, while not getting you any extra money. So there's no point in taking your gun on a bank robbery. If you're doing what's called a note robbery or a drawer robbery, where you're going up to a teller saying, "Give me the money," taking the money and running away, having a gun is not going to increase your chances of success at all, but it does greatly increase the penalty if you are caught. So there's no point in doing it. So as a rational person, I didn't take any kind of weapon. The first robbery I did, I went in to the Great Western Bank on 18th Street in Denver. And I walked up and I handed them a note. And the note said something along the lines of, "Give me all your money, please." And they gave me the money and I ran away. I robbed another bank about 4 days later because I didn't have quite enough to pay the mortgage payment. Again, that was the reason for the robbery in the first place, was catching up on the mortgage. So I did essentially the same thing there. I think I wrote the note on an envelope and told them to put the money in the envelope so that I would then have the note with me. I wouldn't be leaving behind physical evidence. See, kids, as you practice things, you get better at them.
Oh my gosh.
Then I thought I'd gotten away with it, to tell you the truth. Because I got away, I left, went back to Colorado Springs, took the money to my bank, deposited it, wrote a check to the mortgage company, sent the check off, and, hung up my hat as a bank robber, thinking I had successfully weathered the crisis. Then I would say it was about a month later, maybe 2 months, there was a knock on the door, and a Denver County or a City of Denver police detective and an FBI agent were standing on my front porch.
Oh boy.
And of course my heart sank. And I went outside, and they said, "Mr. Hayes, we think that you robbed this bank in Denver. Two of them, actually." I said, "That's crazy talk. What are you talking about?" That's insane. Now, I should say, at the time I was married, and I had a very distinctive wedding band, a large titanium.
Oh, jeez.
That I wore all the time. One of the things I'd forgotten to do, I really messed up the first robbery, but one of the things I forgot to do was take off the wedding band. I went to another city to do the robbery on the assumption that this would help me get away with it, that they would be looking in the wrong place. I'm 60 miles, from my home. But then when you wear something that's distinctive, that kids listening at home, that messes up the plan. So you don't do that.
Oh my God.
So he shows me a picture. Says, "Here's a picture of you, at the teller's office," and he hands me this folder, and on the front of the folder is this picture of my hand, close up of my hand with the wedding band. And I'm holding my hand with the same wedding band on this picture. So literally, you're looking at the two.
I'm sorry to laugh, but that's cool.
It's funny. And so I see this, and I kind of move my hand under the folder, and he looks at me and says, "Mr. Hayes, I already saw the ring. I already told that it's you. You're not going to be able to trick me here that I know that it's you." The FBI agent, in the meantime, is saying nothing. He's there for the ride. The FBI has jurisdiction over all bank robberies.
Because it's a federal, right?
It's a federal crime. Usually, they kick it back to the state, unless you are John Dillinger.
Oh, I didn't know they did that.
Yeah, they do. The states generally do the prosecutions because the FBI's they're busy.
Oh.
So I ended up saying, "Well, no, it wasn't me. Are you here to arrest me?" He's like, "No, we're still collecting evidence, but we'll probably come back in a week or so."
Jeez, really?
Okay. So I went back inside and had a wonderful conversation with my wife, explaining what had happened. She was super, super excited and pleased. Kids listening at home, that's the most sarcastic thing that has ever been said on the planet Earth. Man. She was very unhappy. And about a week later, they did come back and arrested me. I bailed out. I spent the next 6 months or so going through the court process. Ended up getting divorced. My wife left me.
Oh.
So we ended up losing the house anyway. Here's where I will have my first and only criticism of the justice of what happened to me. And that is that I got a sentence of 3 months in county jail. And I got that because I had probably the best defense lawyer in the state of Colorado, an absolute genius of an attorney. And also it was a first offense, and I was middle-aged, and they knew that I had done it for the mortgage, so it wasn't me stealing money to go buy drugs with it. It was a man trying to save his house. Blah,
and
blah,
you didn't threaten anybody.
Didn't threaten anybody. So I ended up doing a 3-month sentence, of which I only did 2 months.
Wow.
And most of that 2 months I actually did on work release.
I got to be honest. When I heard you were out, I was flabbergasted.
Yeah. And I criticized this in that maybe if I had gotten a real sentence the first time, I can't believe I'm going to have to say these words, maybe if I had gotten a real sentence the first time, I wouldn't have done it again later. Is right. So right. But I didn't. I got a very light sentence and thought, oh, I got away with it, essentially. Because in essence, I did get away with it. I did 2 months in county jail, most of which I spent doing work release. So literally, I would leave jail in the morning, go to my office, work all day, and then go back at night to go to bed. So as things go, this is about as close to nothing as you can get. In fact, my lawyer did tell me if the teller at one of the banks had not complained about the leniency in the process, I probably wouldn't have done any jail time at all. My lawyer had successfully gotten the DA to agree to a deferred prosecution, meaning that they don't prosecute unless I do something bad again. I essentially go on probation.
Yeah, reoffend, right.
Reoffend. But the teller was very unhappy, and I can't blame her at all at that proposed settlement and raised a stink, and so they had to give me some jail time. So they gave me very little. And then I was on probation for 2 years. And I essentially spent those 2 years getting away with stuff, lying to my probation officer, starting to use drugs,
Oh,
running around with women of ill repute. This is post-divorce. And just in general screwing up. And at the end of that 2-year period, where I pretty much just spiraled down the whole time, I ended up robbing another bank. This time it was to buy drugs. And I got a 4-year sentence that time. Yep.
It's safe to assume, okay, I would think this, the first time was desperation. The second time,
Yeah.
you just were not clear-headed at all.
The first time was desperation plus stupidity. The second time was, yeah, I wasn't clear-headed. I mean, I don't want to say that in a way of
Make an excuse or anything.
denying responsibility or making an excuse. No, but yeah, I was in a very bad place, and I seriously messed up.
Well, and this is one of the ironies of this, and as your friend, I think if I chuckle a little here at this point I'm getting ready to make, you won't be mad at me because we go way back. But in between these two things, you wrote a book called Stay Out of Prison.
A practical guide for avoiding incarceration, available at Amazon.com
Yes.
for a very reasonable price.
I mean, you got together Corey Aransky, and you two wrote this book, and I've read it, and I've reviewed it. It's a wonderful book, and it's so smart.
Thank you.
It's
If only I had read it.
I was gonna say, dude, you talked earlier. If I typed all these pages about mesothelioma, then I learned all this stuff. Well, did you type any? I'm sorry, I had to do that. I'm sorry.
Hey, you know what? You know what? Hold on, because I actually didn't type it. That must be what happened.
The book,
Because I wrote the book when I was in prison.
right?
I didn't have a typewriter at the time. I was sending handwritten drafts out to Corey, and she typed it up. So Corey knows all the things about how not to go to prison, but I don't actually know them because I didn't type them out.
Well, that must explain. But this
That
book,
explains.
it came out in 2015, and it is on Amazon.com, and we'll put a link in the show notes. This is a great book, whether you're just fascinated with the criminal justice system, as I am, or Robert's story, which is interesting too. But it's this wonderful tome about, and it's written the way Robert talks, and it's very no nonsense and very intelligent. And you say in the book, my purpose is not to help you commit a crime and get away with it. My purpose is to help you stay out of prison. And then you're like, prison sucks. This is, or should be, intuitively obvious. But while very few people think, yay, prison, free food, free rent, sounds great, even fewer people understand the real reasons why prison is so awful. So, you talk about, and you go in depth about how the psychological adjustments necessary to survive in prison can warp you if you're in there long enough and make it where you're, I guess, effectively institutionalized and can't make it out in the real world. Is
Yes.
that what you're getting at?
Yes, it's hardly an original point to me, but it is extremely true. The mentality, human beings do what we have to do to survive.
Right.
If I put you in a situation where you have to be a sniveling coward to survive, and then I take you out of that situation, you're going to be a sniveling coward going forward until new conditions require you to change. But human beings also are limited in the flexibility we have. You can learn a way of life, and if you have to change it, usually you can. But if you keep having to change, or what's worse, if you have to keep flipping back and forth, a lot of people simply don't have the resources, the internal resources, spiritual, mental, moral, whatever you want to call them, to do that. I just looked up online a friend of mine from one of the prisons I was at, and he had gotten out before I got out, and I saw that he just picked up a new 10-year sentence, and I was kind of stunned. I looked on his Facebook page, and he'd been doing terrific on the outside. He'd gotten his job back, he'd gotten his business back, he was making money, he looked healthy, he had pictures of him happy and healthy with his new car. He was doing really well. And then he apparently went and decided to do a new crime and picked up a 10-year sentence. And he's 58, so...
Ugh. That's getting close to life sentence.
Yeah. And the more you go back, the longer your sentences run, The first time you're going to go for a few months. Even if you get a year or two sentence, you'll probably be out in a few months. The second time, you're going to do some of your time. And as you keep racking those up, you get less and less love from the system. Not incomprehensibly. When you're on there on your 9th go-around, they figure, well, maybe we should just keep him here for the whole time.
Yeah,
he's not getting any better.
So is he, in your opinion, just been infantilized by the system, and he just needs to get back into it? Does he have a subconscious need to do that, or are you not going to go that deep with him?
I can't say that specifically for him because I didn't know him that well. But there are a lot of people for whom that is absolutely the case, and that is absolutely what happens.
It's kind of like, what was it, Crooks or whatever his name was in Shawshank that James Whitmore portrayed, the older man, and I forget if that was his name, Brooks, or it was Brooks, wasn't it? And he didn't, they let him out when he was an old man, but he'd spent his whole life in prison, and he didn't want to go, so he killed himself. Yeah.
Suicide is less common. What they usually do is they just get out and they do another crime,
just to get back in.
I got to tell you this. This one really hurts my heart. One of my roommates, where I'm living right now, the halfway house, young man named Clarence. When Clarence was 19, he had just finished community college, and he apparently decided to go rob somebody. And he did an aggravated robbery. He held a man up in an apartment complex and took his wallet and his phone. And then he walked over to the local 7-Eleven and was buying cigarettes. That's where the police arrested him. So, standard genius level criminal behavior.
Right.
You got a 12-year sentence. He did 6 of it, which is pretty typical. He got out to the halfway house at the age of 25. And he started messing up the halfway house left and right, just catching write-ups, doing the wrong things, coming back drunk from the facility from going out on a job search. And he was on the verge of being sent back. They told him, hey, if you mess up again, if you do another significant screw-up, we're going to send you back to prison for the rest of your sentence to finish your 6 years. And so he straightened up. He got a job. He was going to work. He was doing much better. And then, about a week ago, he decided not to come back to the facility. He ran away, which is essentially escaping from prison. We are technically still incarcerated. And he committed another robbery while he was out, or at least he's suspected of committing another robbery. And so now when they do catch him, he will pick up. He's still going to have to do his 6 years that he's still serving. He's going to get a new escape charge. That'll be another 12. And he's going to get a new robbery charge. That'll be another 12.
Jeez.
And Colorado tends to run these things concurrent, so he'll probably end up doing 12 total. But he'll do day for day, meaning he will not be getting good time because he's an escape. And what that means is that he's probably going to do about 10 years on his sentence before he gets out again, before they give him another chance to get out. And the heartbreaking part of this is that he adjusted to prison life. He got out, was unable to adjust back to civilian life, but intellectually realized, hey, if I want to stay out, I have to make this adjustment. I have to change. So he tried. He got a job. He tried to start following the rules, but it overwhelmed him. He was not able to do it. And so he decided to run away and commit more crimes. And it's basically he got a case of the fuck-its, is what we call it.
Yeah.
I got a case of the fuck-its, and off I went.
Wow.
And so he will spend from the age of 25 to 35 in prison. So in his life, he's going to go from 19 to 35 with a total of about 6 months on the outside.
Ugh.
And think about that. When you were 19, you were at University of Science and Arts in Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
When you were 35, you were, I don't know if you were getting married, but you were probably on the verge of getting married and having a child. So basically your entire youthful adult life, all the parts before you got arthritis, and it started, successful sexual intercourse started becoming, an achievement rather than a given. That entire period of your life, the fun part, he is going to spend in an 8 by 10 cell with a metal toilet, getting a letter from his mom, once a month, eating institutional food, working in a laundry, getting more facial tattoos, hanging out with his gang. When he gets out, his chances of reintegration into society, I have a personal, deeply held moral belief that there's no such thing as an unredeemable person. There's always a chance. There's always I liked the Darth Vader arc in the original Star Wars movies. Let's just say that.
Right. Right.
But intellectually, he's not going to make it. He's going to get out at 35. He's probably going to go out and, do another robbery and go back to prison for another 20 and repeat, rinse, repeat until he's either 60 and he's just so old that he can't live that life anymore and he just becomes a broken person and he'll be, out of prison but homeless, living under a bridge, or he'll die in prison, one or the other, if he does something bad enough to. It's an entire human life.
Yeah.
Because he didn't have the ability to adjust. I'm a fairly smart guy. I have a lot of resources on the outside. I have friends, I have family, I have loved ones. It's taken me three go-arounds to hopefully get my head on straight and not return to institutional life. Please God.
Because you robbed the bank, you did your short stretch, then you robbed again. What was the time between the two?
About 2 years.
About 2 years. Because that's where you first did some work with me on my books.
Right.
And you had some wonderful things start to happen in your personal life, which I don't want to go into. You can, of course.
Well, that was a little bit later.
Oh, that was later.
I did go back again. I've been incarcerated 3 times. Once in jail, twice in prison.
Okay.
About a year and a half ago, I sold drugs to an undercover police officer, and I went to prison for another year.
Right.
Had I not been on parole, I wouldn't have gone to prison for that. It would have been a
misdemeanor.
It would have been a risk slap scenario. Well, it wouldn't have been a misdemeanor, but they wouldn't have. They don't generally prosecute. You sold a gram to somebody.
Yeah.
There's room in the prisons for those people. They people in prisons on drug charges generally, if they're white.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go ahead liberal here for a minute. Are there because they did a lot of drug charges.
Yeah.
This was
just stacked on other things you had done, and they were like, okay, you're.
So I went to prison for violating my parole rather than for the actual thing that I did that violated my parole, which may be a distinction without a difference. But
did you? Have you always had an issue with substances, or is this something that came on later in life due to circumstances and it became a coping mechanism? If you don't mind me asking.
It's been I have no secrets, Alex. You can ask my credit card number and it'll tell you, and then I'll laugh because good luck getting anything out of it. The big answer to your question is that I've had a lifelong substance abuse problem. Substance abuse from the age of about, I will say, 21 became a coping mechanism. It was a largely functional coping mechanism until my late 40s, when my drug of choice went from, when I was young, it was alcohol. When I was in my 30s, it was marijuana. And then once I hit 45 or so, it became methamphetamine.
Wow.
Which, as many people will be able to tell you, that's a whole different ballgame. That's going from, I played t-ball, and then I played extra t-ball, and then I went to Major League Baseball and was on the Yankees.
Man.
It's a big jump. And whereas as a drinker, I was pretty functional, and as a occasional pothead, I was pretty functional. As a meth user, really super not functional.
I mean, is there really any way to be functional in meth?
There are people who are more functional than others. I have known people who have gone many, many years and who don't end up in prison. I wouldn't say that they're successful in life. I wouldn't say that they're necessarily happy. but they're at least, if they're doing crimes to support their habit, they're minor crimes that don't normally get you into much trouble.
Gotcha. So this all came to a head, and you went back in,
Yes.
and assume they were not so nice to you. The system was the system starting to look at you askance at this point? Do you think, where it's like,
No, I'm still told by case managers and such that, gosh, you really don't belong here. You're not, one of these things is not like the other. Um, and the fact that my crimes have decreased in severity also argues, in favor of them thinking that maybe I'm just screwing up rather than being a quote bad guy unquote. Going from, usually the progression is you sell some drugs, then you sell a lot of drugs, then you rob a bunch of people while selling drugs, then you shoot someone. My progression went, I robbed some people and then I sold some drugs.
right?
So hopefully my next crime will be jaywalking.
Well, with that bicycle of yours, you may.
I will get a municipal ticket and pay the $200 and go about my business.
So are you where we could of course go for hours, and we've gone along here at time, but so where, just to kind of broaden the view again on this, the more macro, where are you now then?
Living in the halfway house. I will be at the halfway house for another 2 or 3 months, I would think. It's going to depend on actually me being able to find a place to live, but I will be eligible to leave the halfway house in 2 or 3 months.
And at that point, will you still be
At that point, I will be on parole for about 1 more year.
and that means regular visitation or discussions with
Right.
the parole officer? Is that in person every time?
Yes. Generally speaking, I don't know exactly how often because there's a wide range the way they handle it, but I could have an appointment every 2 weeks or an appointment every year. It really depends on how severe they decide my risk of reoffending is.
Yeah.
Most likely it'll be once a month where I go to the parole office, see my parole officer. I'll have a couple of urine tests a month probably because I had a drug crime, to make sure that I'm not using. And if I'm behaving myself and not getting high, then I'll quickly proceed off parole. And I think it's a little bit complicated. I don't want to bore your audience with it, but effective March of next year is when my year of parole would start. And the year will actually be up in about 9 months. So basically, at the end of 2019, I will be off parole. God willing, and the creek don't rise, and I don't go rob another bank.
Which I'm sure you won't. And are you in a program too to help with your substance issues? If I may ask, is there something that's helping you cope with that?
How long do you have, buddy? Let's say that the in Colorado, the halfway house environment is not super conducive to recovery. There are classes. I'm in a class. I go to the class once a week. So far, of the 4 classes I've had, we've spent 3 of them watching the movie 28 Days with Sandra Bullock. Excellent actress and very attractive woman.
Yeah.
Which is about recovery, so in that sense, it's kind of good, I guess.
I guess.
But they don't do much for you, no.
Do you have to avoid triggers? I know in your book you talk about when you get out from jail, avoid people who are going to help you reoffend. If you have a substance problem, you obviously don't go sit around a bar. You don't hang around with heavy drinkers and people who want to use in front of you. Those people are off limits, right? That's one thing.
Yes. That is a critical thing. Having what we call pro-social friends, a network of sober people that you hang out with and spend time with who are doing positive and productive things is incredibly important.
It's funny.
When I got out last time,
mm-hmm.
there was a young woman who used to sell me drugs. She has since gotten her life back on track. And when I got out, I took her to lunch one day. And we just sat, and we were both very awkward, and this is what regular people do, isn't it? It's like, yes, it's like we have lunch and we talk about things. It's like, we're not going to go get high. It's like, no, we don't do that anymore. It's like, okay, so we're going to eat these fries and this burger and talk, and then we'll go home. Yes, that's what we're going to do. It's like acting out a kabuki play of this is what sober
This
people
is what
do.
sober people do. Well, let me ask you this then. And this has given me some thought about you that I hadn't thought previously. Is do you want to edit work where the character has some drinking issues? Was that a
Oh,
trigger for you? Is that a problem?
no, 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 not at all, not at all. The I'll tell you the huge trigger in my life, and a lot of addicts will tell you the same. I go to Narcotics Anonymous once or twice a week, and that's an enormous trigger. Every time I go to an NA meeting, I come out wanting to go get high.
Because people tell stories about getting high. Is that why?
And not exactly. Um, just the. I mean, it's critically important to do that recovery work, and I haven't gone out and gotten high, so it's not a trigger that can't be avoided. And I think I'm told that it does diminish over time, and it becomes less and less like that. But what it does is it reminds you of the lifestyle you used to have,
Right.
which in some ways was super fun. Okay, parents listening at home, cover your children's ears. Drugs are a lot of fun. Okay, you can uncover them now. When you stop, you quickly you remember when you're reminded, like, wow, it used to be that I would meet this attractive woman, like this woman who's telling her story, and we would go get a motel room and have crazy sex for 3 days while getting super super high, and we don't do that anymore. But I remember doing that, and it was super fun. The prison part was not fun.
Right.
Being awake at 4 a.m, puking was not fun. But there are lots of aspects of that lifestyle which are very attractive.
Sure.
Which shockingly is why people do it.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Drugs, they're terrible.
Yeah. Well, people aren't putting a gun to your head making you do it. There's a reason you do it. Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why anybody does. Yeah, I mean, for example, I enjoy cocktail. Well, why? Because it makes me feel good.
Sure.
Relaxes me. Makes me comfortable. Oh, I would love sometime to get you back on the show and talk a little bit more. Maybe by the time we get around to my grandfather's book, which you've edited, we can talk a little again if you're interested. Is there, this is one last kind of creative question around this, though. Has this experience, and I understand it's not over, you are still in this experience. You are still recovering. You are not just from substance, but you're recovering from your brush with outlawry or whatever you want to call it, but you're trying to reintegrate into, air quotes, civil society, right? Mm-hmm. Has this affected the way you look at the work, at writing, at editing? Has it affected the way you approach? Because you said you had this fast food meal with a friend who you used to get high with, and you don't do that anymore. You're looking at life through a whole different lens. Do you look at the work through a different lens based on these experiences?
Well, it's a good question. A great deal of the work I do is pretty dry and pedestrian.
Mm-hmm.
My most recent projects have been writing articles about how marketing consultants can help your small business, writing a user guide for ventless ethanol fireplaces, and I'm getting ready to start work on a project today where I'll be writing an article about institutional investing in farmland. So the connection to the drug-fueled wild lifestyle is, there's not a great deal of overlap, and possibly part of I do tend to have a thrill-seeking personality, and so it may be that the lack of excitement in a lot of the work that I do, I find my work satisfying, but it's not usually exciting.
Right.
There could be some correlation there. On the other hand, I've just finished another project writing a business plan for a recovery center in Utah.
Oh.
Where they have a program of helping people who are leaving recovery care with support and mentoring. Very, very exciting project, really. And I really did put my heart and soul into that. And I think I put a lot more of myself into it than I would have had it been just a normal assignment.
Sure. Well, that makes sense. And I guess if you had that same work and not done it, that would be maybe dismaying, but it's
yes,
that's good. Well, It's
Let me just say one thing.
sure.
I think that the main thing I've gotten from the whole experience, which, as you say, isn't over yet, but 10 years ago, I would have had intellectual sympathy for people caught in the criminal justice system and the way it works. And, I would read things about, young black men getting shot by the police. And I would think, oh, that's terribly sad. And then I would turn the page and see what the baseball scores were, because that would be much more relevant to my life. And I'll say this as a Christian, I have compassion for people that I did not have before this happened. And not because I was a monstrous person before, bereft of all care and feeling, but simply because I hadn't had the experience to have commonality. We can only really understand the things that we understand. And until you live it, you don't understand it. And that has changed for me. That has been an expansion of my heart.
And yet again, had you not said such a beautiful thing, that might have been dismaying to me. But I can see why it would be very easy to close your heart after all that you've been through. But, I've always... there's a reason you and I have kept in touch, and I mean, I haven't seen you I haven't been in the same room with you in decades, but we have always kept in touch through social media, and I love working with you. I respect you so tremendously, but I can still remember back 1985 when I met you, just thinking, I like that guy. That's a good guy. Yes, he can be annoying, although when we did the underground newspaper together in high school, I could think,
oh my Lord.
Do you remember the Eagles edition?
Oh, you just set the Wayback Machine.
Yeah, man. I cannot think of a better partner in crime. I mean, you were so up for it, and getting hauled into the principal's office and all that, but
it was fun.
Such fun. And you're
good times.
Listen, for what it's worth, I think you're a hell of a guy, and I think that you have everything it takes to live your life the way you want to live it. And I'm pulling for you, my brother. Pulling for you.
Well, I appreciate that very much. If you would come to a reunion every once in a while.
Are you going to? Really? Are you serious? Well, I went to the 10-year, and I skipped the others. But are you going to go? If you go to it, tell you what, if there's another one and you're going to go to it, let me know, and I'll work it out.
And in a couple of years when I'm allowed to leave the state, you're a 6-hour bus ride away. It's not like I can't get over there and come say hi.
Well, there you go. Or I can definitely come say hello to you once you're out of your current digs, and we can say hello that way, and that'd be great.
The rules of Colorado Springs, you don't want to do that.
Okay.
They would feather you at the border. They and say, MAGA? You'd be like, what? Then get him.
We've been talking to my good friend and my editor, Robert Hayes, author of Stay Out of Prison, A Practical Guide to Avoiding Incarceration. But again, most importantly to me, my dear friend who I have known for, 30 plus years. And 35, thanks. He's always better at math. 5. Way better at math than me. 50 now. And we're going to continue to work together. And you know what? I suspect he'll be back on this show because I'd love to have Robert back when we talk about Big Cabin and other dispatches from the West. Yes. Yeah. So, and Robert, if they want to get a hold of you, if they need somebody to do copywriting, editing, anything like that, how's the best way to get a hold of you?
Best way to get a hold of me is to send me an email. My email address is DOCROCKET. That's DocRocket@gmail.com.
Yeah, and he's always up for spirited banter as well, I'm sure. Robert, thanks so much for being on Mysterious Goings On. We'll circle back around to you soon, okay?
I can't wait. Right. Thanks again, Alex.
You're welcome so much. Until next time, keep reading.
It's a great time to get a great deal on a new car when you get approved for an auto loan from PenFed. Our Powered by True Car rates are as low as 1.39% APR on new vehicles. Finance for a longer term to lower your monthly bill. Plus, take up to 60 days to schedule your first payment. Join PenFed and together we'll keep you moving forward. Anyone can apply. Visit penfed.org/auto or call 1-800-247-5626. To receive any advertised product, you must become a member of PenFed, insured by NCUA. From regular expenses to occasional splurges, there's a lot to buy. Why not get cash back every time you spend? With the PenFed Power Cash Rewards Card, you get cash back on every purchase. That's everywhere, every time you use it. You can even earn a $100 statement credit when you spend $1,500 in the first 90 days. Visit PenFed.org/PowerCash to apply. To receive any advertised product, you must become a member of PenFed, insured by NCUA.